Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, A Good Listen, where I sit here and tell you about a recent Audible book that I've listened to, and I reveal the book where I got today's story at the end of this video. So if you're a fan of horror, thriller, or mystery novels, or just like hearing good stories told in those genres, then you come to the right channel, because that's all I'll be doing, and I'll be posting once or twice a month. So without further ado, let's get into today's story. Kevin is an inspiring home improvement reality star. He currently has a successful home improvement channel on VideoTube where he uploads simple home improvement tips and tricks on how to fix or renovate certain things in your house. And he has, at this point, generated millions of views off of each of his videos, and he also has millions of subscribers. But Kevin doesn't just want a successful VideoTube channel. No, Kevin really wants to be a home improvement reality TV star. He wants the fame, he wants the status, and he wants the stardom. So he sits there and he's thinking, like, how can I do this? And he comes up with a gimmick. He knows he needs a gimmick. So he comes up with a gimmick, and his grand idea is that he's going to purchase a rundown old beat up house, and he's going to try to renovate this house from a non-livable space to a livable space in 30 days. And during this whole process, he's going to record each day. So for 30 days, he's going to record each day, and he's going to post it on his VideoTube channel in the hopes that a popular home improvement network channel is going to notice him and give him an opportunity so that he can have his own show. So Kevin does his due diligence. He starts searching, looking around, trying to find a cheapo, rundown, decrepit house. He ends up finding not just one decrepit house, a whole neighborhood full of rundown, abandoned, beat up, old, decrepit houses in Detroit. He makes an offer on this house and he gets it for a steal. All the houses in this neighborhood, like I said, are rundown, decrepit. They've been abandoned, they've been neglected, so they're all terrible. But he picks the best one out of all the terrible houses. So now he has his house. And again, his whole purpose of buying this house is to create a gimmick so that he can catch the attention of a popular home improvement network. He actually really doesn't care what happens to the house after he does all the renovations. He just wants the notoriety that he's assuming is going to come from it. So he purchased this house. It's in this little town in Detroit, and he sets up his camera, his tripod, his lights. He sets up all his stuff, and then he goes around filming, showing his viewers what the house looks like. He ends up revealing during this time that he's going to renovate this house in 30 days, and he's going to make it from an unlivable space to a livable space, and he's going to allow them to see it and come along for the ride, basically. And he kind of ends it there. So he takes stock of the house condition. Although the house is disgusting, it's dirty, it's filthy, it's in terrible condition, he notes that the structure of the house itself is actually very sound. He's actually very surprised that the structure, the bones of the house is as strong and sound as it is because it's been neglected for many of years. So he's actually excited and happy about that. As he's going through the house, kind of taking stock of what tools and supplies he's going to need in order to do this type of renovation, he notices something a little bit strange about the house. That there are just long shadows within the house, like objects that are emitting a shadow. It's like the shadows just really strangely and abnormally long. Even his personal shadow, his own shadow itself, is just really longer than what you would normally see with a shadow. So he kind of takes note. He's like, that's weird, but he doesn't really pay too much attention to it. Like, he just kind of puts that aside, and he's like really focused on starting this renovation. So he kind of goes through the town, and he goes to a local hardware shop where he gets all the supplies that he needs, and he ends up going back to the house. Now, he is definitely planning on staying in this house while he's doing the renovations. I mean, it's the most cost-effective thing to do, and he can start early and end late, and he's just right there. Although he noticed other small oddities in the house, he kind of just pushed all that aside because he really had a lot of work ahead of him. He ends up wrapping up his day. So he cleans out a space in the house where he can sleep and put his stuff, kind of set up shop for his living space while he's there at the house. And he wraps up his day as well as his video. He sits down, does the editing for his video. He ends up uploading the video. He lays down, he goes to bed, but he can't fall asleep because he's actually laying in a sleeping bag on the floor in a particular room. And as he's laying in his sleeping bag, he hears like this scratching noises behind the walls. And he's listening, and it's just annoying. It's like irritating him to the point where he can't fall asleep. And so he makes note in his head that he needs to get rat traps because he's assuming that the scratching behind the walls is from rats. So he kind of blows that off, and then he eventually is able to fall asleep. So he wakes up the next morning, and the first thing that he does is hops on his laptop and checks the video that he uploaded the night before. He checks it on his VideoTube channel, and he is excited to see that the video has already generated hundreds of thousands of views. He then goes into the comment section. He starts reading his comments, and he's getting like, oh, this is a cool idea. This is awesome. Some people are being negative, talking about, oh, yeah, like, how's one person going to be able to do that? I told you guys he had help. And then another commenter said, who's that person? And then another commenter said, oh, does Kevin have a girlfriend with him? And then another commenter talks about how, again, it's impossible for him to be able to do all these types of renovations. He knew that Kevin had a crew, even though Kevin keeps proclaiming that he's like a one-man, do-it-all, fixer-upper. But obviously that's a lie because there's somebody in the house with him. And so Kevin is kind of confused because he knows that he's in this house by himself. Like, obviously there's nobody in this house. And so he's trying to figure out like what his viewers are talking about. And one of the viewers actually leaves a timestamp of the section of his video that he uploaded the night before. They leave a timestamp of the clip that they're referring to. So Kevin goes back, he watches his video, and he looks at that particular timestamp, and at first he doesn't notice anything. He doesn't notice what his viewers are talking about. But then he looks at it again, and he kind of just really is like really looking in there, trying to pay attention to like what they're talking about. And there's a part of his video where he's outside kind of wrapping up his video and has just told his viewers what he's going to do. And he's standing outside of the house. And this house is a 2-story house. So if you look at the video and you look at the second floor of the house, there's a figure in the window. As he's looking, he sees the figure and it's distorted, but he can make out that the figure in the second-story window is a woman. And he can't really make out any facial features or anything like that, but he can make out that the woman's mouth is open and she's kind of doubled over, like he's captured her in like the middle of like a hearty laugh. And so he sees this image, he's like, what the heck? Like, was somebody in the house? Was that the scratching sound I heard? Was there that scratching sound not from rats, but actually from maybe like a homeless person who have probably lived in this house before I purchased it, you know, was kind of squatting in the house before I purchased it, and now that woman is looking at me through the window. Like, he was just going through a whole bunch of scenarios in his head, and he kind of just chalked it up that that's probably what it was. It probably was a homeless woman that once squatted in his house before he purchased it, didn't know that the house had been purchased, and just came back, saw him recording outside. You know, most people who do like YouTube, we all know that it's very awkward to randomly talk to a camera knowing that nobody's there. And so he just assumed that this woman was probably laughing at him while he was sitting here talking to the camera camera, talking to nobody, basically to himself. And he just chalked it up to that. It still creeped him out that there possibly was somebody else in the house with him while he was sleeping and that he wasn't alone. But the person wasn't there now. And so he really didn't do much about it. He didn't think much of it. And he had bigger fish to fry because today was going to be the first day of his renovation of this house. A big opportunity to break into stardom as a home improvement reality TV star. So his mind was just consumed with that, and that he really wanted to get started renovating his house. So the first place that Kevin is going to renovate in the house is the living room. So he sets up his camera and his tripod in the living room, and he starts to do the renovations, and he starts recording it. So the first thing he does is he tears down, the drywall of the wall in the living room. He tears that down. And as he's tearing it down, he notices something white tangled on a stud that's in the wall. And so he's talking to his camera because he's still recording. He's still in the middle of doing his first project for the renovation. So he initially refers to this white tangled stuff as a cobweb, but as he gets closer and he actually touches it, he actually mentions that it feels like strawy and it feels like wool. And so he's kind of baffled by this white woolly material that's wrapped around this stud in the wall. So Kevin ends up continuing knocking down the drywall on this living room wall, and as he's peeling back the pieces of the wall, he actually finds a corpse in the wall. Yes, that wool stringy stuff was actually hair that was tangled on the stud by this corpse. Kevin is very freaked out after finding this corpse, as anybody naturally would be. The corpse is definitely like mummified, basically. Like, it's so old, and he could tell that it's a woman. And he's even more creeped out because the wall he found this corpse in between is the same wall he's been sleeping up against, where he's been hearing that scratching sound. And so now he's like freaking out because at first he always thought that that scratching sound was rats. And then he thought it was an intruder. And now that was coming from the same wall that he just found this corpse at. So he is really freaked out and confused. So Kevin then calls the police. The police come out, they remove the corpse, and they ask him a couple of questions. And after that, obviously he's not a suspect because that corpse has been there for decades. So they know he had nothing to do with it. And there's really nothing that they can do because the corpse is so old. So they kind of just sent him on his merry way. And so Kevin doesn't want to sleep in the house anymore. Obviously, after finding a freaking corpse in the wall, who would want to sleep in that house? But that doesn't necessarily deter him. Like, he kind of initially wanted to give up because he was just like, I don't want any of these problems finding a freaking corpse in the wall. But his ambitions and his desire, his dream to be a home improvement reality star, just overrode any fears and any bad feelings that he had about the house. So he decides that even though he really doesn't want to continue on, he's going to continue on. He's just not going to stay in this house. So he ended up finding a hotel that he could sleep in. He's going to now travel from the hotel to the house. So Kevin presses on. He's renovating, he's recording, he's editing his videos, he's uploading the videos. And there are some creepy things that happen, but nothing that's going to scare him away from continuing on with these renovations. And surprisingly, one day, Kevin gets an email from a home improvement network that mentions that they have been looking at his videos. They think what he's doing is great. Keep on doing it. We want to meet with you and talk to you about an opportunity. And they just encourage him to keep on renovating this house into completion. And so now he's really renewed with a greater ambition to finish this renovation, because now his dream, the whole purpose of him doing this is now actually coming to fruition, and the big home improvement network is now paying him attention, and they're encouraging him to continue on with the renovations. So he does just that. So he prints out this email for motivation that anytime he starts to get scared, creeped out, or he just wants to give up during the renovations of this house, he puts this email on the wall so he can continue to look at this email and have that email for motivation as to why he should keep on going. Kevin ends up leaving the house for a little bit, just needing to get some fresh air. His video camera and his tripod and everything were still on when he walked out. And when he came back in, he noticed that his video camera and his tripod was like knocked over. And so Kevin goes over to his tripod and his video camera, and he's a little confused as to why, or how it got knocked over when he was outside. But he kind of brushes it off, and he notices that it was still recording. So he stops the recording and he plays back the video. He looks at the film, and to his horror, the camera was focused towards the living room window. So it was recording outside the living room window. And when he played back the film, he saw a woman come up to the window from the neck down. She had on this dirty white gown. Her skin was exposed and pale and looked sickly. Kevin was even more freaked out by like her appearance, but also like what she was doing. Like the woman, he couldn't see her face, but she was just standing in the window. Her arms hung like lifelessly by her side, and she kind of was just swaying in the window, back and forth. He suddenly started hearing voices, not one voice, not just one woman's voice, but he heard multiple voices, which freaked him out because she was clearly the only one in the frame. So where were these other voices coming from? And the voices didn't necessarily sound like they were coming from her. So he was just really freaked out about, where these voices were coming from. And in the next couple of days following this particular incident, he actually would randomly hear those same voices within the house. But Kevin was determined to, even though all this freaky stuff was going on, so he found the corpse, and now he sees this random woman swaying in his window and hearing all these random voices. He was determined to power through all of this and finish his challenge and finish the renovations of this house. So he pushed all that aside. He didn't forget about it, but he pushed it all aside, and he decided that he was going to continue the renovations. So he decided to tackle the bathroom. Kevin ends up renovating the bathroom. He does as much work as he wants to do in the bathroom for that day. He leaves his tripod and his camera on in the bathroom. He ends up leaving the bathroom, going downstairs to eat. He comes back into the bathroom, again realizing that he left his camera on. He ends up playing back the film in the camera, and he notices that he doesn't see anything in the camera, but he can hear those same random voices that he's been hearing throughout the house this whole time, as well as the same random voices that he heard when he played back that film when that random woman was standing in front of the living room window. It's the same voices, and he hears them now in his camera. But it's baffling to him because the whole time he was working in the bathroom, he didn't hear any voices. He didn't hear anything. Like with his naked ear, he couldn't hear anything. But somehow his camera captured all these voices. So Kevin is completely freaked out about all of this, and he just so happens to like veer and look into the living room where he hung that email up. I mean, he's trying to get some motivation to continue to keep on with this challenge and the renovation. So he looks over at the email, and he notices that now it's not just text on there, there's writing on the email, but it's not his handwriting. So he goes up to the email, he looks at the email, and he reads what it says, what the handwriting says. And the handwriting says, "We want you, many of us, all of us are waiting." So Kevin is now afraid. So he runs out of the house. He ends up calling the police. The police come and they help escort him back into the house because he didn't want to be in that house by himself anymore. So they escort him back in the house. He gathers up his things and he leaves the house. He goes back to the hotel. He is creeped out by the house, but he realizes that he knows nothing about this house. He knows nothing about the background or the history about this house. Not only this house, but this neighborhood. Because mind you, when he bought this house, it wasn't just this house that was abandoned and just in terrible, horrible condition. It was a whole neighborhood of houses that were the same. So he didn't know anything about the neighborhood and why all of the residents there appeared to just up and abandon their homes, including the one he had purchased. And he didn't know anything of, like, the back history about his own house that he purchased. And he really wanted to find out a little bit more information about the corpse in the wall if possible, because when he tried to receive more information from the police in regards to that corpse, they told him that they couldn't provide him any information because the corpse was so old. They just knew it was a woman. They were leaving the corpse named as Jane Doe, and they were kind of just moving on. So he goes down to the local library. He tries to find information about the house and the history about the house. He finds some information which leads to the previous owner, and he ends up meeting up with the previous owner, and the previous owner tells him a horrific history about the house. And not only does he tell him a horrible, horrific history about the house, he also tells him something about himself that Kevin kind of knew was happening to him the longer he stayed at the house. Like, he noticed a difference within himself the longer he stayed in that house, but he didn't really know what it was. And so the previous homeowner told him what was going on with him. And if you want to know about the house that Kevin purchased, the corpse that he found in his wall, and the horrible thing that was happening to him, unbeknownst to him, each day that he stayed in that house, and the crazy, I mean crazy twist at the end that you do not see coming, then I highly suggest that you guys listen to or read The House of Long Shadows by Ambrose Ibsen. It's a really good story, and again, the twist at the end, I personally didn't see it coming. I hope I provided you with a little bit more detail than you would normally receive so that you are enticed to read and or listen to the story in its entirety and enjoy this amazing story written by this amazing author for yourself. If you enjoyed today's story, then please like, comment, and subscribe down below. If you want to follow me on any of my social media platforms other than YouTube, my social media handles are listed in the description box below. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.